The captives resolve in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. The armies of Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem. The walls that once symbolized divine protection now trembled beneath the might of King Nebuchadnezzar. With swords raised and fire trailing their footsteps, the invaders marched into the holy city, dismantling what was once a sanctuary of the Most High. Sacred vessels were plundered from the temple, destined for the pagan shrines of Babylon. Amid the destruction and despair, the conquerors handpicked the finest youth of Judah, nobles without blemish, gifted in knowledge and understanding, to be brought before the king's court. Among them was Daniel, a young man whose name meant "God is my judge," and 3 of his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were stripped of their homeland, their names, their language, even their freedom, but not their faith. Taken to the heart of Babylon, they were to be trained for 3 years in the knowledge of the Chaldeans, learning a foreign tongue and foreign customs, reshaped to serve an empire that did not know their God. As part of their preparation, they were assigned daily portions of the king's food and wine, delicacies meant to reflect privilege yet steeped in impurity. But Daniel resolved in his heart that he would not defile himself. To the chief official he made a humble request, to be excused from the royal diet in favor of vegetables and water. The official hesitated, fearing the king's wrath if Daniel and his friends appeared weak. Yet Daniel, respectful and wise, proposed a test. "Give us 10 days," he said, "observe us and compare our appearance with the others." God, who had already granted Daniel favor in the eyes of the official, honored this bold act of faith. After 10 days, the 4 young men appeared healthier and stronger than those who partook in the king's fare. Thus, their diet was changed, and their testimony began. God blessed them with knowledge and understanding beyond their peers. Daniel, in particular, was granted the ability to interpret visions and dreams, gifts that would soon shake the foundations of empires. When the day of their presentation came, Nebuchadnezzar found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his kingdom. In a court filled with idols and sorcery, the light of their God began to shine. Daniel, though still a youth, entered the service of the greatest king on earth, yet served an even greater king above. But captivity was not merely about physical chains. Babylon sought to reshape identity, beginning with names. Daniel became Belteshazzar. Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, and Azariah was renamed Abednego. Names tied to Yahweh were replaced with those invoking Babylon's gods. Still, they held fast to the truth in their hearts. No name could alter their allegiance. No title could erase the covenant that bound them to the God of Israel. In the shadow of golden statues and ziggurats surrounded by temples to Marduk and Ishtar, Daniel and his friends lived in quiet defiance. Their lives became a sermon, their obedience a testimony. They prayed in secret, studied diligently, served faithfully, but never bowed to the idols of the land. Babylon gave them robes and rings, but they wore righteousness as their true covering. They walked with humility, but carried heaven's authority within. The palace corridors echoed with chants of Chaldean scholars, but Daniel's heart resonated with psalms of David. At night he gazed toward Jerusalem, whispering prayers to a God whose presence was not confined to stone or temple. He remembered the promises given to Abraham, the laws spoken through Moses, the songs of deliverance sung by his ancestors. In exile, Daniel became a sanctuary, not of brick or mortar, but of truth, courage, and unwavering devotion. The path of obedience led him not only to favor but to testing. Each success elevated him, but also placed him under greater scrutiny. Court officials, threatened by his insight and favor, began to watch him closely. Yet Daniel remained blameless. He did not seek power. He did not manipulate. He served with integrity, even when surrounded by schemes and corruption. His life was a silent rebuke to a kingdom built on pride. And still, Daniel waited. Though he served a pagan king, his heart longed for Zion. Though he wore Babylonian garments, he dreamed of Jerusalem's restoration. Decades would pass, and kings would rise and fall. But Daniel's faith remained unmoved. The boy who refused a royal feast would become the man who stood in the council of kings in the presence of angels. His story was only beginning. The same resolve that preserved him in youth would soon be tested by fire, lions, and prophecy. He was not merely a captive. He was a vessel, chosen, set apart, and filled with the Spirit of the living God. As Babylon celebrated its might, heaven prepared a plan. Through one faithful man in exile, God would reveal dreams, deliver judgments, and declare a kingdom not made by human hands. Daniel's journey had just begun, but already heaven was watching. Dreams and revelations, years passed in Babylon, and Daniel remained steadfast, a young Hebrew rising through the ranks of a pagan empire, yet never compromising the covenant that bound him to his God. His reputation grew, not through ambition, but through excellence. Then came a night that would shake the throne of Nebuchadnezzar. The king awoke from a dream, terrifying, vivid, and beyond comprehension. Though it faded like a shadow in the morning sun, the fear it planted lingered. Tormented, the king summoned his magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers. "Tell me the dream and interpret it," he demanded. They pleaded to know the contents first, but the king stood resolute. "If you do not reveal both the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses reduced to rubble." Panic spread. No one could meet the demand. The wisest men of Babylon were exposed as pretenders, their gods, their rituals, their symbols, powerless in the face of a true mystery. Nebuchadnezzar's fury erupted. He ordered the execution of all the wise men, and with them Daniel and his friends were marked for death. But Daniel did not tremble. Instead, he approached Arioch, the commander tasked with carrying out the king's decree, with calm authority. "Why such a harsh command?" he asked. Arioch explained, and Daniel requested time to seek mercy from the God of heaven. That night, in a quiet place away from the palaces and idols, Daniel and his companions prayed. They did not cry out in despair, but with faith. They did not consult stars or books, but lifted their voices to the one who holds kings and kingdoms in his hand. And as the stars shimmered over Babylon, God answered. The mystery of the king's dream was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Awestruck, he worshipped. "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who understand." Daniel was brought before Nebuchadnezzar. The king, still restless, asked, "Are you able to tell me the dream and interpret it?" Daniel answered, not with pride, but with truth. "No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain this mystery, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come." With perfect clarity, Daniel described the king's dream. A colossal statue, fearsome and majestic. Its head was made of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Then a stone, cut not by human hands, struck the statue's feet, shattering them. The statue collapsed, and the wind swept away the fragments. But the stone became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. Daniel explained, "You, O king, are the head of gold. After you will arise another kingdom, inferior to yours, then a third, and then a fourth. Strong as iron, crushing all others, but the feet and toes mixed with clay reveal division and weakness. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. It will crush all other kingdoms and endure forever. This is the meaning of the rock cut without human hands." Silence fell. Nebuchadnezzar's eyes widened, not in rage, but in awe. The dream he had forgotten was spoken back to him in perfect detail. The interpretation pierced deeper than any royal decree. The greatest king on earth had come face to face with a greater, kingdom, eternal, divine, unshakable. Overwhelmed, Nebuchadnezzar fell before Daniel. "Truly," he said, "your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries." Daniel was honored with gifts and appointed ruler over the province of Babylon. He requested positions for his 3 friends, who had stood with him in prayer and faith. Together they became witnesses, not just to Babylon but to all history. In a city built on idols, they revealed the sovereignty of the invisible God. But more than royal promotion, Daniel received a divine confirmation. His life, his faith, and his obedience were part of a much larger story. The dream was not just for a king. It was a message to the world. Kingdoms rise and fall, empires come and go, but God's kingdom is eternal. And through Daniel, a captive turned prophet, that message began to echo beyond Babylon's walls. Yet even in favor, Daniel remained humble. He did not seek glory for himself. He knew the source of the revelation. He knew the danger of pride and the subtle lure of power. So he continued to pray, continued to serve, continued to wait. For in every vision and dream, Daniel saw not only the present, but the unfolding of divine destiny. The fiery trial. The echoes of Daniel's revelation still stirred the halls of Babylon when a new decree shook the empire. Nebuchadnezzar, intoxicated by the vision of his golden head in the statue, failed to grasp the warning of transience. Instead, he chose to enshrine his greatness. On the plains of Dura, he commissioned a towering statue, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, made entirely of gold. It was not merely a monument, it was a statement to the gods, to history, and to the heavens, that his kingdom would not pass, that his glory would endure. A royal command followed. At the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and every kind of music, all were to fall down and worship the golden image. Those who refused would be cast immediately into a blazing furnace. Among the countless subjects gathered before the idol were Daniel's companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel himself was not present at this event, possibly away on royal duties, but his friends stood alone before the tide of conformity. As music filled the air and thousands bowed, 3 figures remained standing. The act was not defiant for the sake of rebellion. It was loyalty to a higher throne, a higher law. They knew the consequences, but feared not death. For the God they served was not confined to temples, nor intimidated by fire. Their refusal did not go unnoticed. Jealous officials, eager to accuse, brought their disobedience before Nebuchadnezzar. The king, furious but giving them one last chance, summoned the 3 Hebrews. "Is it true you do not serve my gods or worship the image I have set up?" he thundered. "Now when you hear the music, if you fall down and worship, all will be well. But if you do not, you will be thrown immediately into the furnace. And what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" They replied, not with hesitation but with unshakable faith. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us and he will rescue us from your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know this. We will not serve your gods or worship the image you have set up." The furnace blazed 7 times hotter, so intense that the flames killed the soldiers who threw them in. Bound and fully clothed, the 3 were hurled into the fire. All expected silence, all expected the smell of burning flesh. But what came next would alter the empire's understanding of power. Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet. "Weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw into the fire?" he asked. "Look, I see 4 men walking in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Staggering toward the furnace, the king called out, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out." And they walked out. The fire had not touched their bodies. Not a hair on their heads was singed. Their robes were unscorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. The miracle was undeniable. Nebuchadnezzar's pride was shaken. He praised the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, proclaiming, "No other God can save in this way." He issued a new decree. Anyone who spoke against their God would be punished, and the three were promoted within the province of Babylon. Yet the true reward was not in titles, but in testimony. Their survival was not just a miracle, it was a declaration. God was not only mighty in heaven but present in the fire. He did not always prevent trials, but he walked with his faithful through them. The furnace that should have destroyed them became the stage for divine revelation. Their example lit a fire in the hearts of exiles. Hope spread. Songs were sung in secret. Though I walk through the fire, I shall not be burned. And far beyond the empire's borders, stories of the three Hebrews reached ears that had never heard the name of Yahweh. For even in exile, even in persecution, God's glory was not hidden. It was magnified. This trial was only the beginning. Greater visions, deeper revelations, and darker threats would come. But the faith of these men stood as a foundation. Babylon could command bodies, but it could not bend souls anchored in eternity. A king humbled by heaven. Though Nebuchadnezzar had seen miracles, dreams revealed by Daniel, men walking unscathed through fire, his heart remained chained to pride. His lips praised the Most High, but his soul still worshipped the throne he sat upon. God, patient yet sovereign, was not done with him. For kings, like kingdoms, rise only by divine permission, and when they forget who grants the crown, heaven speaks again, not with whispers, but with humbling might. One night, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed again. This dream was unlike any before. He saw a great tree in the midst of the earth, its height towering to the heavens. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant. Beasts found shelter beneath it, birds nested in its branches, and all creatures were fed from it. But a watcher, a holy one, descended from heaven and cried out, "Cut down the tree, trim its branches, strip its leaves, scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee and the birds fly away. But leave the stump, bound with iron and bronze, among the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew. Let his mind be changed from that of a man to that of a beast until 7 times pass over him." Disturbed and fearful, Nebuchadnezzar summoned his wise men again, but none could interpret it. At last, Daniel stood before him. The king recounted the dream, and Daniel, upon hearing it, was silent, troubled by the meaning. "Do not let the dream or its interpretation alarm you," said Nebuchadnezzar. But Daniel answered, "My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies." He spoke the meaning clearly. "You, O king, are the tree. Your greatness has grown and reaches to the sky. Your dominion extends to distant parts of the earth. But because you have become proud, God has decreed your downfall. You will be driven away from people, live with the wild animals, eat grass like cattle, and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 years will pass until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms and gives them to whomever he wishes." Daniel pleaded with the king, "Renounce your sins by doing what is right. Turn from your wickedness, and it may be that your prosperity will continue." Yet pride is a slow poison. Though the warning echoed in Nebuchadnezzar's ears, repentance never took root. A year passed. Then one morning, as he stood atop his palace, surveying Babylon, its hanging gardens, its mighty walls, its golden temples, he whispered aloud, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" The words had not yet left his mouth when a voice from heaven thundered, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, your authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like oxen until you acknowledge that the Most High rules the kingdoms of men." Instantly the judgment fell. The mighty king's mind broke. He was driven into the wilderness. His royal robes gave way to ragged filth. His hair grew like eagle feathers, his nails like the claws of a bird. He lived under the open sky, feeding, like cattle, forgotten by men but remembered by God. For 7 long years Nebuchadnezzar wandered in madness. His throne sat empty or occupied by stewards. His name, once uttered with awe, became a tale whispered with confusion. Yet even in his humiliation, mercy awaited. When the appointed time passed, the king lifted his eyes toward heaven, and reason returned. He stood not in pride, but in praise. I blessed the Most High, he later wrote, and honored him who lives forever. His dominion is eternal. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" His kingdom was restored. His advisors returned. But Nebuchadnezzar was no longer the same man. The prideful builder of Babylon had become a worshipper. His testimony became scripture. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, he declared, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride he is able to humble. Daniel watched all of this unfold, not with glee but with reverence. He had served the king in his rise, warned him before his fall, and now witnessed his restoration. In the story of a king gone mad, Daniel saw the finger of God, guiding history, humbling rulers, exalting truth. This chapter in Babylon's saga was not just about power, but about perspective. It reminded all who reigned, and all who served, that thrones are temporary, crowns are borrowed, and glory belongs only to the one who reigns forever. Daniel, though still in exile, carried royal authority, not from Babylon, but from heaven, and his influence, his voice, and his faith would continue to shape the destinies of kings yet to come. The writing on the wall time passed. Kings changed. Nebuchadnezzar's reign ended, and with it the final echoes of a humbled monarch's praise. Babylon, still a golden jewel among the nations, was now under the rule of Belshazzar, a ruler in name second in command under Nabonidus but seated on the throne in the capital. Unlike his grandfather, Belshazzar neither feared God nor learned from the past. The miracles, the dreams, the furnace, the madness, they were stories of a former generation. And so he ruled with arrogance, forgetting that the Most High still reigned above all. One evening, in a display of reckless splendor, Belshazzar hosted a feast for 1,000 of his nobles. It was a night of excess. Golden vessels flowed with wine, laughter echoed through the halls, and music masked the drumbeats of approaching doom. In the heat of wine and pride, Belshazzar committed a fatal act. He ordered the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem, items once consecrated for the worship of the God of Israel, to be brought into his palace. With no reverence and full defiance, he and his guests drank from the holy cups, praising the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. In that moment, Babylon crossed a line. Suddenly, in the middle of their revelry, the room fell still. Fingers of a human hand appeared, writing on the plaster of the palace wall near the lampstand. The music stopped. Cups dropped. The king's face turned pale, his knees buckled, and his legs gave way. Before him, a hand wrote in silence. 4 mysterious words that glowed in the flickering light. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Terror gripped the court. Belshazzar shouted for the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Whoever can read this writing and tell me what it means, he cried, will be clothed in purple, have a gold chain placed around his neck, and be made the 3rd highest ruler in the kingdom. But no one could interpret the writing. The wisest of Babylon stood mute, confused, and powerless. Then the queen, likely the queen mother, perhaps even Nebuchadnezzar's widow, entered the hall. She had not been at the feast, but the chaos reached her ears. "O king, live forever," she said. "There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your predecessor, he was found to have insight, intelligence, and wisdom like that of the gods. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." Daniel was summoned. Now an old man, gray with years, he walked into a palace that had long forgotten him. But time had not diminished his clarity, nor age dulled his authority. The king offered him wealth and status if he would interpret the writing. But Daniel declined. "Keep your gifts for yourself," he said, "and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. He began not with interpretation but with history. O king, Daniel said, the Most High gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness. All nations trembled before him. But when his heart became arrogant, he was stripped of his glory, driven away from people, and lived with the wild animals until he acknowledged that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men. Daniel turned his eyes toward Belshazzar. But you, his successor, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You brought the vessels from his temple, and you and your nobles, your wives and concubines, drank wine from them. You praised gods of silver and gold which cannot see or hear or understand, but you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Then he read the writing. Many, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, while the palace still reeled in fear and awe, the prophecy was fulfilled. Unknown to Belshazzar, the armies of the Medo-Persian Empire had surrounded Babylon. Under the command of Cyrus the Great, and through the strategic genius of Darius the Mede, the invaders diverted the Euphrates River that flowed through the city. While the drunken guards partied and the nobles boasted, soldiers marched silently through the dried riverbed. The gates along the banks, left carelessly, unlocked, opened the city to its conquerors. Belshazzar, clothed in purple and crowned in pride, died that very night. Babylon, the great city that thought itself eternal, fell without resistance. Its walls stood, but its soul was broken. Daniel, however, remained. While kings were buried and empires shifted, he endured. God preserved him, not because of status, but because of purpose. The same man who interpreted dreams now interpreted judgment. He was the bridge between regimes, the voice of heaven in courts of earth. While others rose and fell, Daniel stood, unshaken, clear-eyed, faithful. The fall of Babylon was not the end of exile, nor the end of Daniel's ministry, but it marked a shift. The empire that once mocked the vessels of God had been weighed, judged, and broken. A new ruler, a new era, and a new chapter were coming. Yet through it all, one truth remained. Heaven rules. And Daniel, ever loyal, ever listening, continued to walk the path of revelation, unwavering in the face of kings and kingdoms. Lion's loyalty and the living God. As the golden empire of Babylon faded into history, a new power took its place. The Medes and Persians, under Darius the Mede, now held dominion over the vast kingdom that once bowed before Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. Yet though the throne had changed hands, one man remained, Daniel. His wisdom, integrity, and favor with God made him indispensable to rulers of every era. At more than 80 years of age, Daniel once again stood in the royal court, no longer as a captive but as a counselor to kings, bearing the same unshakable faith that had guided him since his youth. Darius recognized Daniel's excellence quickly. Of the 120 satraps appointed to govern the kingdom, 3 administrators were placed above them all, and Daniel was chief among the 3. His spirit was exceptional, his leadership flawless. In time, Darius planned to set him over the entire empire, but where God exalts, envy often follows. The other administrators and satraps, resentful of Daniel's rise, sought to find grounds for accusation. They examined his records, his actions, his leadership, every law, every decree. Yet they found nothing. He was faithful, no corruption, no negligence, no scandal. Frustrated, they devised another path. If they could not trap Daniel in matters of governance, they would trap him in his devotion to God. Together, they approached Darius with flattery and deceit. O King Darius, live forever. All the royal administrators, prefects, satraps, and governors have agreed that the king should issue a decree that anyone who prays to any god or man except to you, O king, for the next 30 days shall be thrown into the lion's den. Blinded, By pride and unaware of the trap, Darius signed the decree. It was irrevocable according to the law of the Medes and Persians. Once sealed, not even the king himself could change it. Daniel, upon hearing of the law, did not waver. He did not plot rebellion nor seek to hide. Instead, he did as he had always done. 3 times a day he went to his upstairs room, opened his windows toward Jerusalem, knelt down and prayed. He gave thanks to God, not with trembling, but with faith. The decree could silence others, but not a man whose loyalty belonged to the King of Heaven. The conspirators were waiting. They rushed to Darius with news. Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you or your decree. He still prays 3 times a day. The king, upon hearing this, was distressed. He realized he had been manipulated. He admired Daniel, trusted him. All day he labored to find a way to save him, but the law was unchangeable. At sunset, the sentence was carried out. Daniel was brought to the lion's den. Before he was lowered into the pit, Darius spoke with trembling lips. "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was placed over the mouth of the den, sealed with the king's signet ring. That night Darius neither ate nor slept. No music soothed him. He fasted and waited in anxious silence. At the first light of dawn, the king hurried to the den. With a voice laced in hope and fear, he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" From the darkness came a calm voice. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I done any wrong before you, O king." Joy overwhelmed Darius. Daniel was lifted from the den, unharmed, untouched. Not a scratch marred his body. The lions, known for their ferocity, had been subdued by a greater power. It was not nature that spared Daniel. It was the sovereign intervention of the living God. Then justice turned. Those who had falsely accused Daniel were brought forth along with their families. They were thrown into the den, and before they reached the floor, the lions overpowered them. The king, in awe, issued a new decree to every nation, people, and language across the empire. "I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed, his dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." Daniel prospered under Darius and later under Cyrus the Persian. Yet his prosperity was never the goal. It was a byproduct of a life anchored in unyielding faith. He was never driven by status, but by conviction. His loyalty was not to kings who passed, but to the King eternal. The lion's den was not just a trial, it was a testimony. A message carved in history that the God of Daniel is not distant, not silent. He sees, he defends, he delivers. And, through Daniel, the world learned that faith, even when tested by teeth and stone, is stronger than fear. That night in the den became a legacy, a chapter of divine triumph passed down through generations. Because one man, in the face of death, chose loyalty over life,